Think about the last time you kissed someone. Now consider this. There's a real, researched possibility that if you'd been born 50,000 years earlier, into a different group of early humans, that exact act might never have occurred to you at all. For most of the 20th century, scientists assumed romantic kissing was one of the few truly universal human behaviors, something hardwired, something every culture on Earth would eventually stumble into on its own, the same way every culture eventually invents fire or tools. In 1992, anthropologist William Jankowiak decided to actually check. He and his team reviewed ethnographic records from 168 distinct cultures around the world, looking specifically for evidence of romantic or sexual kissing between couples. Not affection between parents and children, not greetings, specifically mouth-to-mouth romantic contact. The results surprised almost everyone in the field. Clear evidence of romantic kissing showed up in less than half of those cultures, somewhere around 46%. In the rest, it simply didn't appear at all, not as a taboo, not as something forbidden or shameful. It just wasn't there, the same way a behavior can be completely absent from a culture without anyone ever needing to ban it. That number held up under scrutiny for decades, and later reviews using expanded datasets found similar patterns. Kissing on the mouth, it turns out, is not some ancient universal instinct baked into every human population. It looks a lot more like a technology, something that had to be invented, somewhere, by somebody, and then spread outward from there, the same way certain crops or certain tools spread along trade routes while other regions simply never picked them up. So if it's not universal, where did it actually come from? One of the leading hypotheses traces it back to something almost nobody thinks about as romantic at all: feeding infants. In many traditional societies, and likely for most of human history, mothers fed their babies through a process called pre-mastication, chewing food first and then transferring it mouth to mouth, directly into the infant's mouth. This wasn't affectionate in the modern sense. It was practical. Infants can't chew tough food, and pre-chewed, warm, easily swallowed food kept babies alive before the invention of soft weaning foods or baby formula. That mouth-to-mouth contact, repeated daily for years across a child's early life, may have laid the groundwork for the brain to associate mouth contact with closeness, trust, and comfort. Some anthropologists argue that romantic kissing later emerged as an adult echo of that early, entirely non-romantic bonding behavior. Under this theory, kissing wasn't invented as an expression of romantic love. It was borrowed from something older and far more practical, then repurposed. And here's something that complicates the story even further. We're not the only species that does something that looks a lot like kissing. Bonobos and chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, have both been observed engaging in mouth-to-mouth contact, sometimes with tongue involvement, during social bonding and reconciliation after conflict. Primatologists studying bonobo troops have documented this behavior repeatedly enough that it can't be dismissed as accidental or rare. If chimpanzees and bonobos both display versions of this behavior, and our human ancestors share a common lineage with them, going back millions of years, that suggests the raw biological capacity and inclination for mouth-to-mouth contact as a bonding signal was already present in our evolutionary toolkit long before modern humans existed. What Jankowiak's research suggests is that the capacity was there, but the specific romantic, deliberate version of the behavior wasn't automatically triggered in every human population. The ingredients existed. Not every culture combined them the same way. So what did the cultures without romantic kissing actually do instead? This is where it gets genuinely interesting, because the answer isn't nothing. It's simply different. In several Arctic indigenous communities, including some Inuit groups, a traditional greeting involves pressing the nose and upper lip against another person's cheek and inhaling, sometimes called a kunik. It's an intimate, deliberate act of closeness between family members and loved ones, built around scent and breath rather than mouth-to-mouth contact. In New Zealand, the Māori hongi involves pressing noses together and sharing breath, a gesture carrying deep cultural and spiritual significance around unity and connection, used in formal greetings as well as intimate ones. Neither of these behaviors is a lesser version of kissing. They're independently developed solutions to the exact same underlying human need: closeness, recognition of another person, physical confirmation of connection, built through breath and scent instead of lips. That distinction matters, because scent turns out to be doing more biological work in these interactions than people usually assume. Humans, like most mammals, pick up an enormous amount of unconscious information through smell, including subtle cues related to genetic compatibility and immune system diversity. Some researchers have proposed that even in cultures where mouth kissing is common, part of what's actually happening during that closeness is an unconscious scent and taste-based assessment of a potential partner, information gathered at extremely close range that would be far harder to obtain from across a room. Under this framing, the Inuit kunik and the Maori hongi aren't strange alternatives to kissing. Kissing might be the strange alternative, one specific cultural solution to a scent assessment problem that other cultures solve through breath and nose contact instead. And here's the part almost nobody talks about. Because once a culture does adopt mouth kissing, the biological payoff is significant enough to explain why the behavior spread so successfully once it existed anywhere at all. A single romantic kiss activates a genuine cascade of measurable brain chemistry. Oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, rises during kissing between partners, the same hormone released during childbirth and breastfeeding that promotes trust and attachment. Dopamine, tied to reward and motivation, also increases, reinforcing the behavior and making a person want to repeat it. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, tends to drop in secure, comfortable kissing between established partners, suggesting a genuine calming effect layered on top of the bonding one. In 2013, researchers studying couples found that even brief kissing sessions produced measurable short-term changes in these hormone levels, meaningful enough that some studies have used kissing frequency as a rough proxy for relationship satisfaction. None of this proves kissing is universal. It proves the opposite of a paradox. Once invented, kissing turned out to be an extremely effective piece of technology for the exact thing every human relationship, everywhere on Earth needs: trust, calm, reward, repetition. That's likely why, once the behavior appeared somewhere in the historical record, and once cultures started making sustained contact with each other through trade, conquest, migration, and colonization, kissing spread aggressively. A behavior doesn't need to be biologically mandatory to become nearly universal in practice. It just needs to work extremely well once somebody tries it, and to be easy enough to copy once somebody sees it done. Fire wasn't hardwired into human biology either. Once one group figured it out, everyone downstream eventually adopted it, because the advantage was too large to ignore. So the honest answer to why we kiss isn't a single clean evolutionary story. It's closer to this. The raw ingredients, mouth contact as comfort, scent as unconscious assessment, physical closeness as trust building, were already sitting inside a much older bonding system, shared with our primate relatives, and reinforced through how we fed our children for millions of years. But the specific romantic act itself, lips against lips, deliberate and repeated between adults as an expression of love, had to be assembled and then culturally transmitted, the same way any invented technology spreads once it proves itself useful. Somewhere in the deep past, in one group of humans among many, somebody put those pieces together for the first time, and the version of you reading this happened to be born into one of the branches of humanity where that invention eventually arrived, was picked up, and never let go.